All right, fantastic. Well, welcome everyone to what I think is our third session for Sales Week this week. My name is Ezra, and I work in our Career and Professional Development office here at WGU. And I am very excited for today's session called Breaking into Tech Sales, featuring our alum, Marcus. And is it Costa? Am I saying that okay? Fantastic. Um, and just a few housekeeping items before we really dig into the topic. One, as you just heard, this session is being recorded. I will share out that recording with everyone on the call, as well as with anyone who couldn't be here today with us live. Just to make sure that the session goes smoothly, please be sure to stay muted throughout the session. It will just help with noise issues. So stay muted. We will have a Q&A portion at the end. And at that point, if you wanted to use the raise hand functionality, or if you wanted to, throughout the session, you are welcome to drop your questions in the chat. And then I'll be sure to go through that chat and make sure we hit on everything that you guys are curious about. And then last but not least, our careers team has a very short 2-question survey that we like to ask after every session. I will drop that link in the chat towards the end, as well as in the email. If you guys can take a minute and just complete that, we would totally appreciate it. So those are all of my items. So let's get started. Marcus, thank you for joining us today. It's awesome to have you here.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Why don't you go ahead and kick us off with just telling us a little bit about yourself? Sorry, I'm sounding like a recruiter. Just
you're
give
fine.
us a brief intro.
Hey, it's about career, so you might as well get used to it, right? Yes, so I'm based in North Carolina, here near Asheville in the mountains, and I have been in sales, I'll say, pushing 10 years now. I did not start in tech sales. I started with home improvement sales, so very different career. And I think the topic of the conversation tonight is going to be that, right? You don't have to, there are different pathways to get into tech, and it really comes down to your goals and your determination to get there. It might not happen right away. Mine, I'll share with you and everybody else. It took a few years, but I had that goal and I had the planning to get there. Right now, I work as business development at Shopify. I serve a business on the diversified segment. So basically, it's a new vertical for us. I am helping museums, nonprofits, hospitality companies, and hotels, and have been with them for about 14 months, so a year and 2 months now, and absolutely love my job and what I do. So happy to be here tonight and hopefully provide, some nuggets for everybody trying to get into the field as well.
Awesome. So can you expand a little bit on kind of how you got into sales to begin with? You said home improvement, and then kind of how you made that switch into the more tech side of sales, if you will.
Yes, absolutely. So I don't think anybody, or let's say most people, don't get into sales as they grew up think they're going to end up sales, right? I have 3 kids, and none of them say they want to be salespeople when they grow up. Like most people, you kind of find your path in life, and sometimes by accident, which was my case. So I came from Brazil. I was fortunate to have opportunity to attend college in the US as an exchange student. And right after I finished college, I wasn't really sure which path I wanted to go into. I did business initially. I started like entrepreneurship and trying to get into more of the startup scenario. I have always had the entrepreneurial help people consulting type of passion. And I started entrepreneurship degree, then soon realized that wasn't really what I was looking for. It was basically very theoretical, I guess that's how I can say it, and not a whole lot of like real life experience. Then I took a break from college, and while I was going through the immigration process, I had already married my wife, and going through the immigration process, I had a friend that offered me a job. He was like, "Hey, you do really well, talking to people. we're needing a salesperson that can help our business grow in the South. How about you coming in and helping us there? Um, and I did that for 3 years. It was good pay there. Being a small company, I didn't have a whole lot of benefits, but it really helped me to get my skills in terms of sales. A lot of what I do today, I still use what I learned. It was basically life, right? I know a lot of people are like, what do I need to do to get in sales? What kind of certification? And a lot of it is you're going to learn in the role, right? There isn't a specific certification, a specific path. So I started doing home sales in we were expecting our first child, and we needed health insurance. So I started applying for some other jobs, and then I went to work for uh, are we allowed to say brands?
Sure.
Okay.
your,
I just
your story.
Okay, yeah. And then I went to work for Verizon. So I did phone sales for small business for a while. And that was fun. It was really interesting to be able to do that. That's my first like interaction with the business to business sales, right? So in that role, I was selling to small business owners. Maybe they had 3, 4 employees and that kind of stuff. And I did really well. And it was the first time, so that would have been end of 2018 when I heard about tech sales, right? So I heard that from a customer. We were talking. I had sold them a few, cell phones, and they had a software company. And that's when he started telling me about what he did, how he worked, and I start looking around for, in my mind at the time, and the misconception that a lot of people had and still have is I had to go back to college. I have to get a degree to get in sales. Nobody's going to take me seriously. So that's when I start looking around. And then I had a good friend of mine that was attending WGU, and he was like, hey, it's going to be perfect for you because you work, you have a family, so you can kind of self-pace and do the way that works according to your schedule without having to, give up work or time with the family and things like that. So when I first started WGU, I went for the cloud degree. I thought I had to be super technical, right? In my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna have to know all this IT stuff. I need to be really, sharp on the technical side because nobody's gonna take me seriously if I don't. Um, and then COVID hit, right? So when COVID hit, um, we were sent home. Like that's my first experience working from home. And shortly after that, layoffs start happening right and left. And I was basically watching YouTube one evening, and I came across somebody talking about, that was a great time to get into software sales because demand was high, people were hiring without experience. So I was fortunate, I would say part of my career. I started applying. So I didn't even have a system to apply. I just start sending my resume to whoever was willing to talk. I would say what helped me a lot initially was I did have some sales experience, and I also was trilingual. So a lot of companies were looking for people that would able to sell cross borders. And then I landed an account executive role at Gartner. So for those that are not familiar, Gartner.
I think we
In
lost you, Marcus.
oh,
Sorry. I can't tell if it was just me.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. I can't tell if it was just mine
Where
or if you
where
broke
where, where
up.
did you lose me?
Okay. Okay. There was a glitch. Okay. Sorry. You
Okay.
mentioned Gartner. That was where you cut off for me. I'm not sure about other people, but
Oh,
maybe,
okay.
sorry, if you could go
No,
back.
it's fine. Yeah, so with Gartner was where I really got into the software world because I was selling consulting packages to software firms. And the amazing part on that job specifically was I got to understand how they operated on the marketing and sales side, side of the business. And I was developing my sales skills, but also understanding how these companies operated. Uh, with that in mind, I also realized I didn't have to be extremely technical on the role. So I switched my role to an IT management because I could use more hours from the class that I had already taken. And then From there, after Gartner, I just start going full sales in the software space. I worked for an ERP company for a while, and then I landed this job at Shopify where I have been. Uh, Basically, I would say my degree has helped me a lot. Uh, but again, it comes to a combination of your goals, right? So when I first heard about software sales in 2018, I started setting goals of where I wanted to go and how I wanted to go there. And even though I didn't have the full knowledge of how to get there, it was more, a trial and error process. But in sales, for the most part, you're going to have to be, you know, very, I don't want to say stubborn, but you have to be very, very focused and very determined to get what you want. That's part of the skills that's going to make you successful in this role. And that starts in your career as well. So that's kind of how I got there, and I hope I answered the question because I feel like I lost some of the initial there, but that's kind of how my trajectory went.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's fantastic. And I hope you guys are taking notes because he definitely mentioned several
Yeah,
other
I feel
organizations
like I
as
went all
well.
over the place, so I apologize for that.
No, 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 that's great. I mean, and I feel like a lot of our career journeys, right, are a little bit, right, windy. They go a lot of different places. So,
Yes.
um, my next question here, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about sales that you want to
Uh,
address?
I I have heard this from different people where they feel like they're forced to push down product that people don't want, right? So a lot of people are like, I don't want to ever get in sales because I don't want to be forcing people to buy stuff. And honestly, you're not going to be doing that, right? Your job in sales, specifically in tech, is going to be find problems. I think a lot of people have the misconception of the old salesperson where they are going to be just like forceful. And really, the market has changed. The culture, like the society has changed where people don't even accept that anymore. So that's a big misconception. The second is that you have to be born a salesperson. I don't think that's true. I have seen a lot of people saying, I'm super shy, I'm super introverted. You can develop that skill. You can develop the ability to talk to people, to talk in front of people, to talk to large audiences like I'm doing right now. And I wasn't. I was super shy a few years ago, and you would never get me to do this kind of session here. Uh, I would say if you feel like you are introvert, that's actually a superpower because a lot of salespeople will fall in the trap like they have to be outgoing, they have to talk a lot. And in sales, you really have to listen more than you talk. So I feel like those are the main misconceptions that people have that, first, they're going to be super annoying. People are going to be mad at them. And believe me, you're going to get people upset at you. It's just part of the job. But also, lately, I would say, especially the last 2, 3 years, the way that people buy in tech has changed a lot. So it's not more, I'm going to wait for somebody to call me and tell me about their product, but more or less is you have to build your audience and you have to kind of create the need for your product, right? Um, so those are the biggest things that I see people, they either shy away from the profession because of those, or they come in with the wrong mindset and they don't last long, right? Because now they're thinking I have to push and push and push, and then more you push down product, more people are going to turn you down. So being able to kind of balance, you got to be persistent, but you also got to know when to stop. Uh, and not being afraid of if you don't feel like you're the most talkative person, it's okay. You can still do very well.
I love that. I think that's so great to hear because to your point, yeah, you always think, oh, it's the outgoing, it's the
Yeah.
extroverts, and it's not the case. So I love that. What do you enjoy most about your role right now? And what are some of the biggest challenges that maybe don't get
Yeah.
touched on?
So the thing that I love the most, it goes back to what I shared earlier. So when I first started thinking about my career, I really wanted to be in a position that I could help either startups or small business or business owners succeed. And at Shopify, that's pretty much what I do day in, day out. So a lot of people right now, when they think about starting their store or selling online, they think Shopify, right? They think, hey, I'm going to start my e-commerce store. So I get to interact with a lot of those scenarios, people that even they are already in business, they're trying to expand to online, or maybe they're already selling online, but they have some technologies that is either too complicated or too complex, and they're like, I want to, use easier tools. I want to be able to just sell my product. I don't want to be a tech expert. So being able to deal with scenarios and then look back and see the change that we were able to provide to those business owners is very, very rewarding. Uh, I do recommend, if anybody has a chance, and I don't remember exactly what page, but if you Google Shopify Lockwood, Texas, it was a documentary. It takes about 20 minutes to go through it, of a town in Texas called Lockwood. That last year we went to that town. It was a town, one of those American towns where a lot of the companies have moved overseas or moved down south, and they lost their jobs, and the towns pretty much died out. um, and Shopify was able to come in, part of a a community outreach, and talk to local business owners. So there's a particular couple that they were selling instruments, right? So their audience was that little 5,000 people, and then Shopify was able to expand them internationally. So being able to look back and see those successes and those stories are very, very rewarding, and honestly, the one of my favorite parts of my job that I do. When it comes to challenges, I would say there's a lot. I mean, it's not all flowers. When you are in sales, you have to deal with, your quotas are always going to increase, right? So that's stressful. You have to be okay living in kind of a roller coaster in one sense, because you're going to have quarters that you do really well, and then the next quarter doesn't do as well. So you got to understand, first of all, be consistent in what you do day in, day out, whether make a certain number of calls or sending out a certain amount of emails and text messages, and be consistent regardless of whether the results are showing up right away or not. What I do see a lot of people struggle, they have a really good month and they're like, oh, I'm doing great, I'm hitting my quota, and they forget that next month is going to start from zero. So they stop doing the activities that got them there, and then the next month they're like, they dip. So that's a challenge, to be able to be consistent regardless of whether you're seeing the results right away or not. And also having to deal with the changes that happen often, whether it's internally in a company or in the market. So right now it's a challenge across the board from different companies, because there's a lot of uncertainty, right? So if you talk to, you know some industries, it comes around, tariffs. Is my raw material going to cost more? If so, I can't buy from you right now because I'm going to put all the money that I have into buying raw materials. So that impacts more than people think. Um, and then it comes down to also, inflation. So when things get really risky in the market, companies, they get more careful. So you got to be strategic how you think. Even when you go about your job search, there are nice to haves that company will buy when they're doing really well, and they're must haves, right? And you really want to be selling on the must haves because they're a little more stable regardless of the market. If you're selling a nice to have, an additional tool that take extra pictures or records the screen that other three tools do, you might struggle a little bit more when the market goes up or down. Um, with that being said, if you know how to navigate those things and you know how to, again, be consistent, the rewards are big. Bigger the risk, bigger the reward. You're going to be able to do really well if you can just be stable and, again, do everything you do day in and day out, knowing that those challenges are part of the job. And I guess the last one that I'll touch in terms of challenges is going to be dealing with rejection. It happens. You cannot attach that to your personal value, right? A lot of the people, especially right now, being more tenured, I do get to interact with the new hires, people that are coming out of college and things like that. And sometimes they feel just because they got rejected on a call that they're bad, they're a bad person or they won't be successful. Basically, your mindset has to be, I'll get rejected 80% of the time. That doesn't change the fact that I'm doing my job, I'm the best at it. And, at the end of the day, when I finish my work, I'll turn off my computer. That doesn't change who I am as a person.
That's fantastic. Those are so many good points there. So then moving into kind of the meat of our discussion and then the topic of the session today. But what advice would you then give to students who are looking to break into maybe tech sales, especially for students who, might have been doing something else and they're kind of transitioning now into more of that tech aspect, or they don't really have a lot of experience to
Yeah,
bring with. So if you can touch on those pieces, but yeah, so sort of your
absolutely.
advice.
And and again, I apologize if I'll be out all over the place here. I think there are two things that anybody trying to get into tech right now they have to have in mind. Is first, the market right now is not the best, right? It doesn't mean you can't get a job. People are still getting hired. You just have to be really strategic. So when I said earlier, it was a little bit of luck because I got in a really good time when COVID hit and everybody went, or most of the workforce went remote. Companies were buying software right and left. They were scaling their teams. They were hiring people with no experience. Basically, if you applied, you would get hired. In those days are over. To be like transparent and honest. But again, like I said, I have seen people being hired daily with no experience. They're just very strategic on how they do. I would say approaching the job search, approach as a salesperson. At the end of the day, you're selling yourself to that recruiter, to that company. And you got to make a case on why they should invest in you. Um, with that being said, so if you're going to be a tech salesperson, most of the time you're going to have like an account territory. That's what we call. So basically, it can be geographic, it can be verticals like I am right now. So anybody in the industry or anybody in the state of California, for example, and you translate that into your job search. So now you want to create a territory of companies you would like to work for. So what I recommend is first to start with the list of your skills. What have you done in your career? Maybe you work for, and a lot of people are like, hey, I have just been working in a restaurant my entire life, and that's okay. You have a lot of skills that you acquired there. Think in terms of what tools would you use in a restaurant. So right out of the gate, I think of point of sale systems, software for, online order, things like that. Now, how can you translate the skills that you acquired into what that business does? Because at the end of the day, for a company, it's a lot better to hire somebody that has experience in that industry and knows how to talk to customers. So now I would think in terms of like what companies sell that specific, you know, let's use as an example point of sale systems in software for online ordering. What companies are in that vertical, in that industry, that I can apply and consider that? If you have no experience, 9 out of 10 times you're going to be hired as an SDR, so a sales development representative, which is the entry level. Basically, your job is going to be opening the doors, making calls, sending emails, getting customers to engage. It sounds boring, and it can be, but also it teaches you a ton of skills that are going to help you down the road. So your job is not just to make a cold call. You're going to be doing a ton of research into those customers to understand how they work, how do they make money, and then translating to why should you talk to me, right? I understand your world and I know I can help you improve. That's how you have to take that approach. See the skills you have translating to the industry that you're already in. It's going to be a lot easier for you to get hired that way than if you are working at a restaurant and now you go to apply for an SDR role at a cybersecurity company. More than likely, you're not going to even be called for an interview. And that's just being transparent with you. So, understanding how to approach that. Second is going to be a lot of your work as a salesperson is going to be networking with people, getting to know other people. So, do the same in your real life, in your job search. So, LinkedIn is a great place to start. Start sending friend requests to people that work at the company that you're applying for. So if now, let's say I was going to go apply for a job at Salesforce, I am going to send out connects to anybody that does that job that I want. Not everybody's going to accept, but I'll include a note saying, hey, John, I'm applying for the SDR role at Salesforce. Just wanted to, follow your journey or learn from you. Don't ask much. Like people will not respond if you're just, hey, I want to talk to you, give me 15 minutes of your time. They're not going to respond, right? But just say, hey, I want to follow your journey. Um, a lot of people are active on LinkedIn, and then you can see what they're posting. A lot of people are going to post what the challenges they're facing, things like that. And if they respond, then you can say, hey, do you can you just give me two things that I should know, during the application or the entry level process in the interview. And to be honest with you, that's how I got this job right now. So I knew I wanted to work for Shopify. I had applied and I was turned down a few times. And I started sending friend requests to everybody that was on the role that I was pursuing, and just saying, "Hey, love Shopify. How do you like working there?" And like a few people start responding, "Hey, this is great company. This is how you do it." And I start gathering intel. And you're going to use the exactly same process on your sales role. You're going to do that day in day out. So you might as well start practicing. And if you're bold enough and you see a role that's up, so on LinkedIn specifically, you're going to see sometimes they put the hiring manager there. Give them a call. If their phone's on their profile, give them a call. Say, hey, John, I saw that you're hiring for this role. Would like to, you know, talk to you about it. I applied, but when can we interview? Like, sell yourself. Do what you would do on your role, right? That you're applying for. And then as you start networking, and start to understand how those business work, now you can start tailoring your resume to that application. If you create one resume sent to 100 companies, more than likely, your success rate is going to be very low. I am a big proponent of personalize your resume to the job that you're applying for, to the company you're applying for. Show them that you have the skills, even if you don't have 100% of the things they're asking. If you do have 70% of it, and then learn how to, you don't want to lie in your resume, but you learn how to translate the skills that you have into the role you're applying. So if you serve tables for 10 years, now you can say, I have extensive knowledge in customer service. I have experience interacting with people. I have experience running inventory, and translate those things to make you appealing. And then if you have one of the things that initially I had, I was very ashamed of my accent, and I was very ashamed of not being, a born citizen. Then I realized that was actually a strength, right? So I start leaning on it when I start applying. Hey, I am actually trilingual. You can leverage me to sell across, South America, Latin America, and start leaning in those things that people don't have and you have. Don't see as a weakness, see as a differentiator, something that's going to make you stand out from the crowd. And be reasonable, right? So I had somebody that reached out to me, and they're like, "Hey, I'm applying for this senior account executive at such company." They had never worked in sales, right? And now they want a job because they heard that they want to work remote, they want to work in a salary that's $250,000 a year, but they don't have experience. That's unreasonable. It's probably not going to happen. And also be willing to make sacrifices initially. So a lot of people will be, I want work in tech because remote work. Now, year after year, remote work has declined some. A lot of companies, including where I am right now, a lot of it's hybrid, right? So you have to come into the office. Be okay with that. At least you got your foot in the door. Now you can prove yourself and you can build your career capital to later on start applying for jobs that gives you that flexibility. So be willing to put the hard work up front. That's going to make you stand out. Even if it requires you to come to the office every day, come to the office every day. If you have no experience in sales, the office environment is really good. It helps you learn from people that have been doing this for a while, that they can, you can shadow them. The remote environment is great, but also makes challenging when you're coming with no experience at all. So be willing to make those sacrifices up front. I read somewhere a few days ago that for every remote role that comes up, there's like a couple thousands of people applying right now. So just know that you're competing with a real large pool, and that's going to reduce your chances, especially right now when a lot of people went through layoffs and there's a lot of people experienced in the market right now looking for work. So be willing to go against the grain to start your career, to get your foot in the door. Also, look at startups. A lot of people, they want to go straight for the big companies, the big corporations. And again, you're coming against, hundreds of applicants for that role. Look at startups, and LinkedIn has a nice feature where you can select now startups, and usually they're going to be 200 people or even smaller than that, but they are willing to give you a chance to get your foot in the door in the industry and start gaining experience. So a lot of times that's how you're going to break into the industry, is just going against the grain what everybody else is doing. If everybody's applying for that role, go for the ones that are in office in a small company, put a year or two there, work hard, and then you start building your experience in your resume to progress your career.
I love everything about that. That is such a great advice. And I mean, full disclosure, right? I reached out to Marcus on LinkedIn. Um, I was looking for alumni who are working in tech sales who wanted to speak, and that's what I did as well. And so I think that's fantastic advice. And I will add too, I mean, look, right, use that filter and find WGU alumni, because look how
Yes.
fantastic they are
and
sharing
and,
all
and
of their
use that to your, yeah, I would say use that to your advantage too. If you're looking at a company and there's a WG alumni, reach out to them. Hey, I went to WG. You're more than likely to get a response, so use that to your advantage as well.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. All right. So can we touch a little bit on the training piece and the professional development and kind of what your experience has been in sales? Do you find that most companies will provide training, or what does that look like, especially as you're kind of starting out in sales and some of those entry level roles?
Yeah, every single company is going to provide you some sort of training, right? Typically bigger, more established the company, more structure is their training. And it can go from anywhere from a couple weeks to, I think at Shopify right now is at 30, 40 days, somewhere in there. They changed a few things since I started, so I'm not so sure. But when I started, it was about 30 days training period. And typically they're going to go through the company, the product, and then the role, and kind of like in that order. Uh, some startups or some smaller companies, they don't have as a structure uh, training programs. What I would say, if you're really proactive and you're really taking control of your career, there are a ton of free material there on both YouTube and LinkedIn that you can start learning about what the roles, in tech are, but also what skills you need for each role. So in an entry level SDR, BDR role, you wanted to spend time learning how to talk to people and do the cold approach, right? So making cold calls. That's why I say if you're going to apply and they have the phone number on their profile, go for it, because you're going to be doing that every day. Um, so making cold calls, and that's, I would say, the part that a lot of people fear is having to make the cold calls. And they're scary. I mean, I do them every day, and I still have that little chill when I'm getting ready to do, because you have no control of what's going to happen when they pick up the phone, right? They can yell at you. Um, Fun fact, like today I was making cold calls, and this guy picked up, and I knew we had reached out to him in the past, and he didn't even let me finish. He goes, hell no, I'm not talking to you. And he hung up. I mean, it is going to happen every single day. Now, you have to be able to, not take that personally and spin straight into the next customer, right? So if you let that come in like, oh, they hang up on me, then the rest of your day is going to be a wreck. Um, but I would say try to learn how to start conversations out of zero, right? So if you have never been exposed to that, I would say, if you're in line at the grocery store, talk to the person in front of you. Say a compliment to a stranger. Just get the fear out of you. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. Whatever you need to do to get that initial like fear of cold outreach, because you're going to be doing a ton. Um, the second piece, and I would say nowadays is probably going to be one of the most important ones, is going to be able to do copywriting. So knowing how to write well, good emails, good and concise text messages, that's going to be a lot of your work. So knowing how to write well, or at least know how to use tools that helps you write well. So me personally, like I said, I'm not a native speaker. So a lot of times before I send an email, I'll run to Grammarly or something like that, just to make sure that I don't have any mistakes or anything that would be, really unprofessional. So you having acquiring those skills would be really, really important. Last, I would say is learning. It's a combination of two things: is learning how to do in-depth research. So approach as if you were an investigator, right? Knowing how to do in-depth research, but also knowing what tools to use for that research. So personally, I have been using a ton of AI tools lately because they speed up my, you know, boring tasks a lot. So knowing how to do prompts, knowing how to stay on the forefront of technologies is going to be really, really helpful. Because one thing you're going to see in tech is there are a ton of different tools you're going to use day in, day out. So you have to be proficient in learning new technologies. It's okay if you don't know, but you cannot sit there 6 months trying to figure that out. I know for us, if something rolls out, usually you have 24, 48 hours and you gotta be rolling and learning how to use that tool. So you have to be efficient in knowing how to do research. If you don't know how to do something, go deep into researching and learn how as fast as you can so you can roll it out, because your job, it's going to be your consistency plus with your ability to execute when things change, which they do all the time. um, a lot of that, like for Shopify specifically, when you start, they will give you code call training, email training, all that kind of good stuff. I would say if you haven't been exposed to that, somebody that I like a lot on LinkedIn that does really good training is Jason Bay. He teaches a ton about how to do email. And then if you want to learn cold calling, there is a podcast called 30 Minutes to President's Club. Really, really good podcast. And they also have a group, I think it's paid for, where they will practice with you and help you get that skill set up. So most of your training before you get to the role is going to be self-paced. You're going to have to go out there and find it. But most companies will give you, at least the basic you need to get started.
That's great, and some great resource suggestions. Um, Looking at kind of switching it up, so we talked a little bit about training and breaking into it. What does kind of the career progression look like in tech sales? Say, for example, you might use your own personal story. Like, what does that next step look like for you or for someone who's kind of been in this role
Yeah.
for a while?
Um, so you're going to have individual contributors and managers, basically how any software company is going to be divided. So individual contributor, basically you're a lone wolf, you're doing your job, part of a bigger team. Manager, as the name says, you're managing people. If you are somebody that doesn't really care for managing and you want to follow the individual contributor path, typically you're going to go from SDR to an account executive or account. Some companies call account manager, some call sales executive, one of those variations. And then from there, you can go to like, it's not necessarily that path, but it kind of like splits. You can go to account manager, account executive, or you can go to what we call solutions engineer or solutions consultant. The solutions consultant role is going to be a little bit more technical. That's where I want to get to when we talk in terms of goals. And I think WGU is going to be great in my degree along those lines because it gave me the foundations of the technical knowledge that I need to have to get there. So the solutions engineer, he's going to be the guy that comes in and answers all the technical questions that the customer has. Some smaller companies, the solutions engineer is also going to be really involved in implementing the solution as well. Um, those are like kind of how you start on the individual contributor role. Then, if you want to go a manager path, usually you can become an SDR manager, where you're managing all the SDRs in the organization. You can become an account executive manager director, where you're managing all the AEs. And then you can become a VP of sales or VP of revenue. Some companies have both roles, some just have one, which you're managing the entire sales organization, how they go to market, and basically, whether they're successful or not. So that's the traditional path. And then kind of like it's still in sales, but kind of more like on the post-sale side. Once the SDRs come in, they open the doors, they book the meeting with account executive. The account executive is going to go through the sales. So think the account executive is kind of like the coordinator of that process. And then the solutions engineer will do the demos. They will answer technical questions. If you're buying expensive software, usually they'll have something that's called proof of concept. So large companies, they'll just change everything, overnight. So if you're selling to enterprise companies that are doing billions of dollars, what they'll do is they will allow you to run your software to like 20 people in the organization and let them run for 6 months to see what they feel about, what they like, what they dislike. Um, Once that's done, then the contract signed, the sales done, and now starts implementation. Some organizations, they kind of put implementation with sales. Some organization will throw that in post-sales team. It's the people that are going to implement everything. Depending on what you're selling, that can be anywhere from 2 days to a couple years, right? So if you're in the ERP market, that's a real long process. And then you have, once the implementation ends, you have customer success or merchant success. Pretty much every company will have that as well. Um, the customer success, again, is still a sales role, but you're not selling to new customers. You're selling to existing customers. Usually, you're going to have a book of business, and you're going to monitor how they are using your solution and what you can do for them to increase their usage or upsell them, right? So a lot of the customer success, what they'll be doing is looking for other opportunities that they can sell additional packages or additional features, or if a company has different software, they can sell that too. So it is very much of a sales role. It's just that some people some people think it's a little easier because you're dealing with companies that already bought your product. They already know who you are. But again, it is a sales role at the end of the day.
I 100% agree with that statement as someone who used to do customer success.
Oh yeah.
It is very much so a sales role,
Yes.
and you are accountable for those renewals. So thank you for sharing.
Yes.
All right, I have one more question. So, folks on the call, please be thinking and start adding your questions to the chat. Um, I know you mentioned kind of how the industry has changed a little bit, but can you talk a little bit about where sort of the tech sales landscape is going? What kind of your predictions are and how it will be evolving in the next couple of years? And I know you touched on the AI component, but
Yeah.
especially, I mean, at least I have seen those AI tools out there, right? Everything from
Everywhere.
emails to those calls to lists, email addresses that they're pulling for you, right? Lots of different things out there. So, do you want to share just a little bit about what's kind of on the horizon for this particular role in
Yeah.
industry?
To be clear, that's like my opinion at this point.
Yeah.
I'm, from what I'm hearing from other people, and not that I made some sort of a research paper on it. Um, I think in terms of tech, new tools are rolling out around AI. To your point, everything is AI. How can we use AI for prospecting? How can we use AI to increase efficiency? Uh, Part of the market, I have a strong feeling that's getting saturated. So typically, what you see, you have this quick growth. Everybody's rolling out a new feature, a new product, or a new software. It gets traction, and then some companies, they hit a plateau, and then they start either going under or they sell, to a larger company. I think looking at the economic scenario of this year, I would say that we're starting to get into that phase. So I have seen a lot of smaller acquisitions happening. Uh, Shopify has done quite a few in the last few years. You will see, and that's one of the things that's very unique to the software technology space. So typically, you're going to have a real large company. So let's use Salesforce as an example, that they sell the CRM. Side note, if you don't know what Salesforce is, you definitely need to learn. That's like 80-90% of the companies are using it. And then you have what we call ecosystem. So these are other software companies that they will build add-ons or another software to add a feature that Salesforce may or may not have. Sometimes they have, but it's not good enough. So it's called the ecosystem. And what's happening right now, a lot of these smaller tech companies that are part of a greater ecosystem. So Shopify has that greater ecosystem. Salesforce has, HubSpot has. They are getting acquired by either the main company. So Salesforce has done quite a few acquisitions too. And then, or they will merge with another smaller company to get a little, stronger in the market to compete with other, you know, um, competitors. So I think overall that's where we're going to head in the next few years. Is the market start? We had too many tools released in the last 2 3 years, and now things are starting to come around. Like let's consolidate. I have seen and been hearing a lot of companies saying that they are reducing their tech spend, so that's a concern as well in terms of like, to my point earlier, if you're selling a nice to have, that's a tool that you probably can go with a spreadsheet. More than likely you're going to start seeing, those companies decline or try to get acquired, or you know merge with some competitor or something like that, um, which is great in one sense, because if you're in the industry, it's going to open up new doors for sales to happen and things like that.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Yeah, I agree with you. I've seen that in the ed tech space because that's
Yeah.
kind of what we monitor. And yeah, definitely those mergers and acquisitions happening. All right. So feel again, if you have questions, feel free to add them in the chat, or if you would like to, you want to raise your hand, that's great. And then just for time's sake, let's try to keep the questions general and kind of away from personal situations. I think, and Marcus, I'm going to check with you, but are you okay with folks connect with you on LinkedIn afterwards if
Absolutely.
they have some specific questions? Absolutely. Okay. So questions are coming in. The first one, what are the minimum requirements for tech sales positions? Is a customer service background needed or tech skills kind of for that minimum?
Customer service background is a good to have because it shows that you know how to talk to people, right? And you know how to handle problems. SDR roles, entry level roles, you might not need to have any background at all. If you are a young professional just out of college, there are plenty of like internships and entry level that they're like straight hiring you straight off college. If you're a more seasoned professional and you don't have any sales background, and maybe you work and I'm not referring to anyone specific, but let's say you worked call centers for a couple of years, you can use those skills as well, because you made calls, you answer calls, you in one sense you're selling yourself, you're selling the company that you're answering for. So I think it's not as much as the baggage you're bringing, is how you can spin that into the skills for the role that you're going after. But if you have customer experience, that's really good. If you have sales experience, that can be a shortcut. So, to my point earlier, like I said, maybe maybe you're selling cars right now. Go after the companies that the software that you use at work, right? What software are you selling? What are you using? And then find the companies that make those and apply for roles at those companies. Your chances are going to be exponentially higher to get an interview than just going from field A to field B without any expertise.
That's great. And on that note, for the transferable skills, I am going to put just in the chat for anyone who's interested. If you're trying to work your resume to highlight those transferable skills, if you go on our career website, we've got a whole resume section on it, but there's also an opportunity for you to make an appointment with a career advisor who can walk you through that kind of step by step there. So great question. The next one, about how long does it take to transition from individual contributor to manager?
Ooh, that that's really that's going to depend on several things, I think. Um, I have seen people get promoted within a year. Uh, I have been almost 10 years, and I just don't want to be a manager, right? It really depends. It has that play, like where do you really want to go? If you want to go to a manager role, I would say you have to be able to execute on the role that you are right now really, really well. Um, I would say, reasonably speaking, 3 years minimum. I think that's the minimum average that I have seen. If you are a super rock star, you might be able to get promoted within a year. 3 years minimum. I would say more reasonable, as I'm thinking through it, probably 5 years, I'd say.
Great. And then another question here, how can someone sort of figure out if sales is the best fit for them? Kind of what, like maybe they're kind of thinking about it, but they aren't sure. And I will say sometimes it seems daunting, especially when you
Yes.
have to hit those quotas. So what would you recommend? Like if someone is kind of thinking about it but not sure, how can they figure out if sales is a good fit?
That's a great question. Try selling something in terms of um, if you have the capability and the time. Try to sell. I would say like an idea that I'm having right now, and I did that too. Um, there are a lot of companies right there that are called merchant services that they're selling point of sale, which is a sort of a software. They don't require you to go through a hiring process. Basically, you sign an agreement with them and you're paid commission as you sell. So you can still have your W-2 job and then do that on the side. And then dedicate a few months doing that, making cold calls to local businesses, and get a feeling like, do you enjoy doing that? Then probably sales for you. Do you absolutely hate and feel miserable when you have to talk to someone? Probably sales not for you. You're not going to be able to run from the fact that you're going to be talking to strangers. So again, if you're introverted but you're like, I can overcome this,
Mhm,
no problem, go for it. But if you absolutely do not like dealing with strangers and people at all, and you know that you have tried in the past, maybe that's not the path.
mhm.
But I would say I think the best advice is try selling something on the side, especially if you have to do a cold approach to somebody that's not your family and friends, and see how you feel about it. Do it for a while. Like, don't try to sell one time and make a decision. Do it for a while, see if you grow into it, and then if you start getting comfortable, maybe you found your path there.
That's great. All right, another question here. And let's see. Would you suggest to go after the SDR roles as a gateway into tech, regardless of prior experience?
Uh, Generally speaking, yes. Right now, let's say, for example, you have been in if let's say you have and I'm going to bring this up because I actually have somebody recently in our company that went that way. They were a software engineer. They worked as a developer for a few years, and then they decided to move to a sales role, right? And because they had built that career capital, they were able to make the transition. They had, led teams, they had done presentations, they had done evaluations, so they could translate the skills that they developed into an account executive role, which is not considered an entry level. Um, but I would say if you're coming with little sales experience, most of the time, the easier way is going to be through the SDR path. Now, if you have 10, 20 years, like I said, to a point earlier, selling cars, you might be able to skip the SDR and go straight for, an account executive role.
Mm, great. And then who do you attribute most to your success? Who inspires you or who helped you most along the way?
My wife for sure. Like I said, you're not in sales because that was most people are not in sales because they dream of being a salesperson when they're little. More or less, you got a point of in life, and me included, where you're really desperate to get things to work. You needed the money, and you start realizing that I can make actually really good money selling. And if you talk to CEOs and founders, they all will tell you that if you know how to sell, you can succeed. So having my wife definitely inspired me. Having my children definitely put the pressure to go further into it and make sure that I'm hitting those goals every quarter or monthly, whatever. Uh, in terms of outside of that, my dad was in sales growing up. Um, he was in retail sales for his entire life, his entire career, and he really loved sales. And I think part of me giving sales a chance was because of that. I remember he was really happy in his career and he really, did well in terms of like professionally and even financially. And he inspired me a lot. And to this day, when I'm faced with things that I don't know how to act or what to do, I'll give him a call and say, hey, how would you handle this? And I would say he's a big inspiration as well.
That's awesome. Um, All right. I think, sorry, we are at 6:59 at least Eastern time, and I want to be conscious of your time. I know there are a few other questions, and I would say, is it okay if students just kind of reach out to you via LinkedIn and
Yes,
you do that?
feel free to
Okay.
connect me. Yeah, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I cannot promise I'll respond right away. We are entering the last week of the quarter, so we are trying to hit quota for the team and hitting quota for myself. I'm still a couple sales short there, in part of the profession, just being transparent with everyone. So this coming up week, I may be a little behind on everything, but feel free to send a connect, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can.
Perfect. All right. So I put your LinkedIn in the chat for folks. Um, thank you so much. I Such good advice, I think, whether you are going the sales rep or honestly, such a great advice for just your job search in general. And so I really, really appreciate your time today, giving us a glimpse into your role, into your career journey, and sharing all of your advice. And thank you, everyone who joined us on the call today. I am going to plug in really quickly here that a feedback link. Again, this is for our careers folks. It just helps us with planning future sessions and if you have suggestions on future topics and things like that. So, but thank you, Marcus. Really appreciate having you with us tonight, this afternoon, depending on where you're
Yeah.
calling in from. And
One
thank you,
thing I will
everyone, for
say,
joining us.
if you are into people are into reading, one thing that really helped me to get where I am, and I'm not saying that I have arrived, but there's a book that's called So Good They Can't Ignore You. I would recommend, if you're into reading, to take that book and read it, and read it a couple times, because if you take that approach, you will see some doors opening up for you for sure.
Perfect. All right. Fantastic. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.